You figured it out, bro.
Yeah, okay, I'm recording. We're recording, man. We're recording now. And are we live? I think that might be live on Facebook now. I hope that
it should say in the left top corner of your screen, it'll say live, and then it'll show like Facebook as a drop-down option.
Can you see that, Ange?
Click on speaker view.
I don't see it.
Somebody can also check their Facebook page on the phone and see.
Well, hey, well, welcome. My name is Pastor Alex Bryant. I'm here with my wife, Angela Bryant.
Hello.
Alex Bryant Ministries. I hope this is coming to you live on Facebook. That's our intention. I have said everyone that knows me knows that I have the technology expertise of probably about a 4-year-old. I couldn't even say a 3rd grader because my kids know how to do things better than I do now. I'm joined here with a few of my friends, and I want to introduce them to you. We just want to have a discussion on race and the death of George Floyd, the state of our country right now. These are some pastors and church leaders, and so we just want to have a discussion. So the goal of today is to have a panel that is represented with Black and white people, and so that's the goal. So I've invited a few of my friends, people that I know, and I'm going to start introducing them to you and give them a chance to greet you. Again, I hope this is coming to you live on Facebook. If it isn't, we're going to go ahead and update it. So do you guys see it? I mean, no.
I'm not seeing it.
All right, so I'll keep trying to check that and try to play with it. Ange, maybe you try to hit this. I think it's right there. You're supposed to hit it. Okay. Live. I hit it. I don't know what the thing is. So, but
Recording.
all right, it says recording, but I think it is recording. Well, if it's not live, we'll post it. But anyway, we're joined with my good buddy. His name is Will Jones. He's an evangelist and lead communicator of Awakening Ministries International. He's also going to be the co-host. Him and his wife, Jen, reside in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and just a man of God. So Will, maybe greet the people and just share your heart.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks, Alex and Angie, for hosting this. Man, it's such a privilege. Everyone that's watching online, it's a blessing to be with you today and just talk about the matter of racism and the church in America and how we can just offer hope and solutions and share real life engagement from many different perspectives. And so just welcome you today as you are tuning in and as you are watching this, and invite you to share it with your influence, your network, as you are watching this as well. Even do some watch parties if you like. It'd be a fun, engaging conversation, my friend. So thanks for joining in.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Will. And then we also have Pastor Jeff Leake. He is lead pastor of Allison Park Church in Pennsylvania. Pastor Jeff, thank you for being with us. Maybe just greet the people.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, guys. What an honor to be a part of this group and to be doing life together with you, especially in these difficult times. I really appreciate being able to be a part of this conversation. So thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. And then we have Bishop Lee Scott. He's a pastor in St. Louis, one of my friends. He and I ministered together in St. Louis during the Ferguson situation with Mike Brown. So Pastor Lee, maybe greet the people.
Alex, it's so good to be with everybody here. It's an awesome opportunity to share and talk and really try to keep people focused on some real connectivities like the love of Christ, how important it is to share his grace with one another, how important it is for us to just be unified to the one cause that everyone that God created is important.
Amen.
Thank you. And then next we have Pastor Sarah Taylor. She's the executive pastor at Carbondale Assemblies of God in Tulsa. And so she's also one of my classmates. We both just graduated with our degrees at Assemblies of God Theological Seminary. And so she's a good friend and a brilliant mind. So Sarah, go ahead and greet the people.
Well, thanks just for the opportunity to be on the call. I'm really humbled to be a part of this incredible group. I'm not sure how I got here, but just an honor today to be able to listen and to be able to just get to know some other brothers in Christ. So thanks again.
Thank you. And then finally, Dr. Evangelist Alan Griffin. Congratulations. He has recently graduated with his doctorate. And he is the founder and president of Accelerate. They help young adults in the foster care system by equipping them with the tools and the skills they need for life in America. So Dr. Griffin, That's be about the only time I'm gonna call you that on this call. Go ahead and greet the people.
It is great to be on this call, and I appreciate your efforts, Alex and Will, to get us together. And I think if I could, my role here today is simply this. We're going to have practical measures that help us not give up. Amen. And moving forward. What now? And I'm excited to talk about what's now and what's next.
Amen. Amen. And then finally, I do want to introduce, I've already said, myself and my wife, my beautiful, lovely wife, Angela. She's here. It's always good to have you on the call. So
well, thank you.
Want to greet the people?
Hello, everybody. And I feel like I've been out here enough to where you guys already know me. So I'm the other part of this Alex Bryant Ministries deal. So yeah.
Well, I think she's going to be kind of playing with the technology a little bit. Here, you might want to do it on my phone.
I'm trying to make sure that this is going.
Trying to see if we can get it live out, because I don't think that it is. But if it's not, we'll record it and we'll post it up as soon as we're done here. But I just want to jump right in. And this group, first of all, again, thank you for being a part of this discussion. Here's the goal for this conversation. Originally, I wanted to, when Will and I were talking, I said, hey, let's get some Black pastors together and just talk. And because a lot of people want to know what we're thinking, what we're feeling, because really and honestly, we're giving them an insight as to, and I don't speak for all Black people. No pastors do. But when we get a big array of people together, maybe we can have different voices that are representing different people, because we're all talking with people. And so I originally wanted to do that. I wanted to start with that so that the country can hear what's going on. A lot of my, white brothers and sisters are saying, hey, help me process this. And so we wanted to do that. But Will and I, said eventually right then, hey, we wanted to also follow up with a mixed panel. And we're going to do a few more of these. I want you to have different voices, so that we can all talk, we can all listen, we can all learn. And so that's the goal of this. We're going to discuss a few things. I got some questions and things I want to discuss even today. And I'm just going to start with this. This incident happened with George Floyd that brought about all these discussions right now, but it's just one of many. We know and seen a lot of them that have been happening in our society, in our culture. Some people don't want to call it an epidemic. Some people say it absolutely is. And I don't want to get hung up on where we land on that. But the bottom line is Black people are hurting. They're angry, they're fearful, they're enraged, and understandably so. And I was listening to one pastor say that that's what a lot of white people see is the fear, the anger, the rage, but it's really the pain. Yeah. It's the pain of injustice, of feeling like, when is this going to stop? What can I do? The feelings of helplessness. And so I just want to start with that, and maybe just start with, a couple of our Black pastors on the panel. It's like, what's your feelings? What, after you saw this video and now we're 5 days later, what are you feeling? What's going on with you? Start with you.
Well, Alex, it hurts. It really hurts. One of the things that really got me on this particular incident is it's not every day that you actually see life dissipate a body.
Yeah,
it's very rare, and it was painful to watch someone lose their life while trying to live. I mean, the pain of that, I think everyone felt that, not just Black people, but everyone felt that, because whatever he did, everyone knew that he didn't want that to be the end of his life, because he's asking, hey, I can't breathe. I can't do, something's going on. He's crying out for help. And I think that makes it more painful to hear someone ask for help, people around him that can help him, but unwilling to help him. And that sends a rage like people can't begin to understand it, especially in African American community, because people want to feel valued.
Yeah.
And the question becomes, at what point? I mean, I'm you know, especially in this time of COVID-19, one of the things that we understand is that, you know, is people that have those lower jobs, those Black and brown jobs that are essential, you know, in cleaning, making sure things are good, and they're doing a lot of work right now to impact and make a difference. But then you find out at the end of the day, I'm still in some people's eye not valuable enough to be considered at this moment.
That's good. Alan, what's on your mind?
I think what went through my mind immediately, watching the video, experiencing it over and over again as it played through. I think probably the main thing that hit me immediately was this thought of, man, we tried to avoid this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We've been fighting and, you know, talking with as many people as we can ever since, you know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, when Trayvon Martin was gunned down. I was in a convenience store in Sanford, Florida, gassing up my vehicle, and George Zimmerman drove right up, got out, got a drink from the convenience store, got in his car and left, wearing a Glock t-shirt. And I thought, this man is walking around and someone's baby's gone. And we tried to help, you know, whether it was BLM or other civil disturbances or movements, but it kept being deflected into something else. And so it was more of a dismay for me, as a prophetic voice. It was a dismay that I felt that, man, I tried, and it seemed like everything fell on deaf ears. And now, not here we go again, but it's getting worse.
Yeah. What about you, Will? What?
Yeah, and then I concur with the responses that have been given. You know, when I initially saw that on Tuesday morning, and I was just immediately moved to tears because of the fact of, like Bishop Scott was referring to, watching, you know, a life of an individual that was asking for life, being taken by someone that really almost appeared to have no regard for human life. And that was just painful for me to watch. You know, it brought up just some memories in my childhood of things that I went through as a Black kid, you know, experiencing so many countless stories of racism. And so it brought some rage to me, some righteous indignation, as I would say, that really led me to want to speak out in a way that was healthy and to mobilize action toward the church, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, the body of Christ, to take a stand for what we have been seeing for years, centuries, of injustice, and knowing that the church does play a part in it. Either we'll be silent or we will speak out.
Yeah.
And so that's how I was feeling, man.
Yeah. You know, I want to say this, you know, as well for the people that are watching. You've heard a lot of our thoughts. I mean, Will posted a great video immediately, and I would encourage you to go to his Facebook and check that out, just with the real raw feelings and emotions. And there's stages of grief. And I think that, you know as I was trying to process through as a man of faith, I was thinking, okay, I have to kind of process through a little bit more quickly, because immediately before I even saw the video, people are texting me, hey, did you see it? What do you think? What happened? And, you know, we're in the middle of a move, and so I didn't, hear it and see it. And both Black and white brothers and sisters that are texting, calling, asking. And I wanted to just listen. I wanted to hear what they were seeing, what they were feeling. And so I want to do this too, like to some of our, white brothers and sisters that are on the call. And I want to say this, before we even go there, because there's going to be questions that I have that I've written down that I want to pose at some of the Black pastors here, some of the white pastors, and some to both of us. But we have to be comfortable and okay with that. I know that some people that'll probably be watching this, I always get this, why does everything have to be about color? Well, I see color. When I turn my head like this, I see that I'm looking at a beautiful white lady, and so, we have to be okay with that. We say this, that race and our color describes us, but it doesn't have to define us. Mm-hmm. And so, I got some of my brothers on this call. We joke about stuff that we won't hear right now, but, it just is what it is. We have to be okay with that. So not trying to offend anyone, but I really want the world to be able to see that Black and white people can come together and talk about such a sensitive, touchy subject. And we're not trying to be politically correct. I mean, I want us to have I want our feelings, our emotions to go, but also understanding that all of us that are here, we don't speak for everyone, but we do speak for people that we've spoken to and that we talk to. And so I in that, setting that up, to some of my white brothers and sisters, like when you saw, what were some thoughts? What were some feelings?
Well, for me, I found out about it by watching Will. So I hadn't seen the video of what had happened with George Floyd. I was just scrolling through Facebook and I saw Will with tears streaming down his face. And I was like, what just happened to my friend, And then when I started to listen to him pour out his heart, for me, it became personal because, Will and I are friends. I'm on his board. I pray for him every day. And now I see his heart's breaking and he's pouring out his heart to the whole world. So I watched, it was probably about a 20-minute prayer / heartbreak session. And as soon as I was done watching that, I went and watched the video and I was in disbelief. And then I rewatched it and then I was sick to my stomach and I couldn't even watch it again. Like somebody said, did you see this? And I was like, yeah, but I just got to gather myself first. I think, I've been on a journey of listening for the past couple of years, trying to get just a little bit more aware. But I don't think anything has impacted me quite like this. Like it's taken me to a place, I think, of depth that I don't think I've ever quite touched before. And I'm probably not alone in that. So for me, I'm probably all of those stages of grief right now. I go in and out of disbelief to anger to hopelessness to, So that was, I guess, my process of how I discovered about what happened.
I think for me, it was just that Tuesday, just scrolling through Facebook and just seeing post after post after post. And I think somehow earlier this year with Ahmaud, with his death, followed by the lady Brianna, and then it just felt like something is coming to a head that I can't remain silent any longer, and yet I'm fearful for what to say because I'm afraid that I'm going to say the wrong thing because I've seen too many people say something that makes me cringe a little bit, and I don't want to be that person. And so it becomes then a problem of I want to say something. I want to do more than just like that on Facebook as if somehow now I'm in solidarity. So my heart says I have to do something else and I have to lend my voice, but I'm afraid that when I lend my voice, everybody's going to go, oh, she said that out loud. That's really embarrassing because I've done that to too many other white friends. And so I'm honored then to be on this call. Somebody give me what I'm supposed to say. Give me some talking points because I want to be able to say I'm sorry and I'm listening and I'm here, but I don't want to. I don't want to say something that's cringeworthy, but it just feels like I have to say something because this is not okay, and this has just gotten to a place where what can we do, because we have to do something and we have to do something now.
Well, I want to address just that thought that you just shared, Sarah, that, I don't want to do the wrong thing. And I'm reminded of when I first had my degree in counseling, and I was practicing as a volunteer at our church at that time. I was just so scared. I was young, and I thought, what do I have to bring to the table? And the minister that was overseeing that program, he just stopped and looked at me and he said, "Do you have the Holy Spirit inside of you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know." And he's like, that's the only requirement that I'm asking of you, is just to walk in the Spirit and to just see what happens. God's going to lead you and guide you. This issue, although it is different on so many levels, it's not any different than what we do. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, and we just need to proceed because God is stirring this up in all of us. And so we walk in that confidence, knowing that our heart's in the right place. And here's the other thing. This is not going to happen without awkwardness. Right. It's going to get awkward. It's going to get tense. So just know that, and just be you, and do what the Holy Spirit is leading you to do and say.
And the haters are going to hate.
They are.
I mean, all of us. I mean, I get them. You can go on my Facebook right now. The haters are already starting to come out, but it is what it is. And it's because of this. Everyone on this call, and when you're watching this, you're listening to pastors, and our heart will be expressed that unity, love, peace, forgiveness. That's where we want to eventually take all of us. That's our heart. But I want to stay on that for a moment, Sarah, because you bring up a good point, and I'll throw this out to the rest of you. Do you hear white people saying, "I'm scared to engage"? And what do we say to that?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. And I was just on the call with the state of Minnesota yesterday, a bunch of leaders from around the state on the matter, and that was a common denominator that I heard. And I processed it a little bit. I was like, wow, okay. And I'm going to just, what I'm going to share, it's not necessarily geared toward you, Sarah, but what I'm going to share is just what I was processing. And one of the things I was processing is, when we look at racism, as a systemic matter, it's viewed as a particular race or ethnicity that has positioned themselves as superior to another race. And that takes place within the society, the system of our culture of America. And what that has been is just white privilege. That it's been honestly the fact of the matter. And what that comes with a lot of times is having the knowledge, the tools, and the resources to know everything at the right time and what to say. And I was listening to so many people saying that, and my process was, and my thoughts were, at this particular time, it's okay to not know what you don't know. That actually could be a step toward humility. That actually could be a step toward us developing racial humility, to not know what we don't know and be okay with that, but leaning in to those who do know through their experience and or research and studies. An individual that you may have a relationship or you might have one with, to lean into them and listen and to seek to understand in this season and feel what they feel the best that we can. And so with that, even like this pandemic, churches have had to pivot on the drop of a dime. Right. And man, in the pandemic, we learned as leaders that we're gonna fail. It's evident. It's going to happen. And so, as a matter of fact, if you're planning not to fail, you're causing yourself more stress. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'm telling my brothers and sisters that are white is like, man, drop the perfectionist, drop the need to have to know the answer, drop the need for having to want to have it right, and just let people see your heart in this season. Let people feel your heart. And so that's one of the things that I'm just encouraging a lot of friends that are expressing that same kind of tension.
That's good. That's good. Anybody else want to talk on that?
I do think, though, there's a level of relational intelligence that has to be used. So it's like this particular wound is generational and it's intense. And if you've ever been in a situation where maybe you're around somebody who's just lost a loved one and they're grieving, what you say in the midst of that is, or let's say they just had a breakup in a relationship, what you say right then is very important. And a lot of times it's best not to say anything.
What you don't say.
Yeah, just to be present. And So you have layers of problems for the white perspective. One, you have some people who aren't willing to admit what you just said, Will, that there is a white privilege situation that's just inherent. Okay, that's an inner resistance to that. And then there's, secondly, you have people that don't have high emotional intelligence, and they say dumb things in every context, right? So, and then you have the heightened sensitivity of how deep this pain goes. And, you know, we all have white friends who were like, no, don't say anything, right? Because we know it may not necessarily be that they are prejudiced inherently, or at least they're not aware of what they have. It may just be that they lack a little bit of emotional intelligence, and they're going to step into something, they're going to make a problem worse. And so some of this creates a hesitancy. What I have discovered over the last couple of years is that most of my Black friends are longing to have this conversation with me. And they want me to say, is this stupid? Is it okay? Can I bring this up? Am I seeing this wrong? And every time I have acted like that and just simply humbly come to the conversation, recognizing that I don't know everything, it has 100% of the time been met with grace.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a key component here, and that is, don't say too much, be humble, and it's okay just to keep your mouth shut and listen.
That's good.
Because just being present in a moment of grief is one of the most important things you can do.
Pastor Jeff, I want to say this, and I'm going to give you guys another chance. Angie and I think people know this, and I almost feel bad. I almost feel like I'm self-promoting, but we feel God gave us a tool for the church. It's a book we wrote called Let's Start Again. And I know specifically God told me one time, redefine the terms. You know, there's a difference between racism, racial ignorance, and racial insensitivity. And the bad thing is, when we lump them all in together as racism, it shuts down a lot of conversation. Yeah. Because if I think you're racist, I'm done talking to you. That's it. You're over. I'm labeling you. I don't like you. Boom. But if I can look at some stuff and go, that's a dumb question, that person's just ignorant, I have a little bit more grace in my heart. And so I can come together and try to be unified. And then some things are just racially insensitive. Some people are just not, and we are pastors, some people just are not socially aware of the situation. You know, I mean, the emotional intelligence. And so, but, you know, let's talk on that. So, because I think a lot of times, Sarah, and you brought this up, white people are maybe afraid, not knowing. Maybe, what are you thinking? I mean, let's speak on that. Racial ignorance, racial insensitivity versus racism. I mean, any thoughts on that?
I think that there is kind of a misunderstanding for what that is. And so when I say, if we were to say from the pulpit, racism is a sin, amen. But if we then begin to confront all of those smaller things and that bias that's there, right? So whenever you talk then about, the same people that will say amen to racism is a sin are the same people that are going to say, let's wait for all the facts. And well, I wouldn't drive into that community after this hour, or it's that kind of thing, that it has to become a much more nuanced conversation, because most people think, I don't hate Black people, therefore I'm not a racist.
And they go to sleep every night.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff left in there. And that's what we don't always feel comfortable confronting. That's what we don't always feel like we're sure what to say. And so I wrote to Alex, and I thought, well, let me just have a conversation. And I said, I think that we need to have that kind of Jesus moment where he said, you've heard it said, racism is a sin, but I tell you. And I'm missing on all of those, but I tell you, this more nuanced conversation. And instead of Alex answering my question, he put me on this call. So,
so let's talk about it, because that's good. You brought up the racial bias.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. I don't think most people in our churches, they love God and they love people. And that's why they say things like, I don't see color because I just see all the people. And we're missing all the complexities then when we don't choose to see that. And we're missing the fact that we're like, I'm not a racist and I didn't murder anyone today and I didn't commit adultery. And we're missing all of those. Yeah, but did you devalue anyone? Did you lust in your heart? Did you actually say something that was hurtful? And so I think that's the conversation that we're all a little bit unclear. How do we begin to have that and move the conversation from racism that you think of this way is wrong, but also this?
Okay, Alan, I'm coming to you because you're an evangelist. You've been in black churches, white churches, brown churches, everything in between. I'm not a racist, but speak to this. Come on now. I know you've seen it all and everything in between, and you don't have to give any churches in particular. But what do you see when you're out there?
I feel like what God has called me to do is to love people into a new level of unity, and so God's opened the door for me to serve all churches. I grew up in the black church. My dad was a pastor in the Black Baptist church, and in junior high, I ended up in the Assemblies of God, a predominantly white fellowship, and I find myself often educating. I hope not everybody sees this on Facebook, because now they're going to figure me out.
It's too late.
But there's an ulterior motive when I communicate, and part of it is to break stereotypes.
Yeah.
Part of it is to awaken people to the nuances, as Sarah so very well put it. And if you don't know Sarah, watching this right now, she acts like she doesn't know, as does Jeff Leake. But she is very adept in community activism and community compassion. And that church is powerful in those areas, and have dismissed members from their churches that lacked compassion for all races and backgrounds. Yeah. And so often when I'm communicating, I'll slip in little words and deeds to help people understand, help Caucasians understand the culture. One such thing is I'll say, hey, listen, I know when you look at me, you think I'm Will Smith, but actually I'm more like Carlton, because it's so hard for white people to know that there's different educational, socioeconomic status within our communities, and all of us have value. But to show that there's nuance there begins to put texture upon the construct of one's world. And without those textures, there's nothing to grab a hold of for people to love you. And so, it's an amazing step that we have to take, where I feel like most African Americans have at least a bachelor's degree in Caucasians. But most Caucasians don't even have a first grade education in Black culture or many cultures.
That's good.
And so it's really important that we share who we are consistently with one another, and that's why the listening component is so big, because African American culture is powerful and influential, and America would not be America but for the backs of Black workers, not just slaves, Black inventors, Black creators, Black designers, Black entertainers, Black engineers, Black architects, Black scientists. So there's so much more to add texture.
Black preachers.
Oh man, like this one, Lee Scott.
Well, so let me be the bad guy.
Go.
Because I think that I appreciate what's been said. I really appreciate, and I really get the spirit in which things have been especially Sarah. But I do think that is a privilege that is afforded to you to be able to say you don't know color. Because as I grow up, I had to grow up knowing color.
Right.
Matter of fact, the society helped me know color when you say whites only for color folk. So I grew up in rural Kentucky. And so I had to know color and be able to know the differentiation of not being able to work with the appropriate color, what the outcomes were going to be. And so I do think that is a privilege afforded to you. But that privilege wasn't afforded to me. when the restaurant below my house will only serve color folk in the back because we couldn't walk through the front door. We have come a long way from that. But when we have incidents like this, it forces us to rethink how far have we come.
Mhm.
Because many color folk have become comfortable and laxed, forgetting those pains and struggles that we've come from. And when we see something like this, and it becomes blatant, matter of fact, the gentleman looking at the camera while his knee on the boy's neck, like he ain't doing nothing wrong. You force me to remember. You force me to remember color. You force me to remember, okay, if a police person comes, you force me to remember that I need to know which police is coming so I know how to deal with them. 18-year-old boy riding my dad's Cadillac in predominantly Black community. And back in the late 80s, the police department was predominantly white. They see a young 18-year-old boy riding his dad's long Cadillac, going to his girlfriend's house, stops me for no reason at all and say, "Get out of the car, boy." Now, you force me to remember color. And when I see this incident with this police guy, now I'm remembering something that I forgot. And so now you force all African-American people to remember pains and scars that they had forgotten personally. And now here's what happens. When I go to work and see my boss, which may be white, I got a problem. They ain't done nothing to you. This white person they said good morning. But because of what happened on TV, that might as well have been the guy with the police. I'm already off. I'm already off because you forced me to remember the pain that we went to get here that I have forgotten. My sons, they're extremely diverse. One of my sons is he works for West Point's football department. He's got everybody in his circle. Matter of fact, he don't see color like I see color. He's extremely diverse. I mean, he's brilliant. And I had another one that graduated from ORU, Oral Roberts University. Extremely diverse. Part of the worship team, extremely diverse. They don't see it like I see it. Their pain hasn't been my pain.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, again, I'm growing up in rural Kentucky. Yeah. Right?
Pastor,
huh?
No, go ahead. I was going to say, you're because before you go more, I want to hear some response to that because you're saying a lot. You've said about two things I want to come back to, but what do you guys say to that when he says, you're forcing him to see that when, his experiences are there? Like, thoughts? Anyone?
Lee, I just want to say I'm so sorry, man. I'm sorry.
And can I say something before you do that, Pastor?
Yeah.
Here's the problem. It wasn't you.
No, I know. But
your heart, your spirit, I can sense that. It's not you. The problem that we have as a Black community is that we apply it to every white person, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
I don't think you should have to say you sorry for that white cop.
No, I know. I don't have to, but I am sorry. And I grieve with you. I'm sorry all that happened to you, and it makes me angry, makes me want to cry, and I just forgive us for being so ridiculous, stupid, hateful. You shouldn't have to bear that. And so I grieve with you, my friend.
Now, Alex know me, and he knows I'm a pretty diverse guy myself. So
It is.
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm able to sit on the call. And so I'm not saying that I have problems with white people. I am saying this to say
What you're hearing.
the culture is forced to deal with it differently.
Yeah. Well,
so
go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Alex.
Because, you and I love this. First of all, man, scoot over so we can see you there, brother.
I'm trying to get in the frame. I'm too big to get in the frame.
Me and my wife,
I need a slim, fast moment, Doc. I need
Richard
Richard Simmons on the line right now, man.
I just want to give a little context to this, and I want to stay here for a second because God brought Bishop Scott in my life when I was new to St. Louis, pastoring an inner city church, and he helped shepherd me and lead me. He's quite a bit older than me. No, I'm just teasing. But he helped me see things from an older perspective, different generation, and from the perspective of his experiences. I don't have those. My experiences, and I've shared this before with white people, have by and large been positive experiences. I don't have the experience that you have, Bishop Lee, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on this call. We have many discussions where we go back and forth, but like there are people that you represent that have those feelings. Yeah. Because when you say something like, "Man, you forced me to see color on this," like that's not how I saw color. And so because of that, I get people call me, "Well, you're a sellout. You're an Uncle Tom. You don't even know. You ain't really black. Look at you. You're light skinned, whatever." But that's just not my experience. And so when I, see something like that, my heart goes out because, dude, and I've shared this. You see a man, I believe he lost his life on the street right there. That's just dehumanizing. And I do believe that happened a large part because he was black. And so, but I don't carry the same weight that a lot of people that that your experience that you're describing carry into that. And so when we're coming together, and when we're talking about even the next generation, and from both sides, and, how do we move that forward? What's the message that we want the younger generation to have? And how do we teach them to not, or almost even, I don't want to say shield them from those experiences, but, we don't want them to carry the pain of, hey, I know what it was like to not be able to eat at that restaurant. So therefore they go in with that bias. Right. White people have their natural biases, black people have their natural biases, and they just continue to perpetuate themselves. So that's kind of a conversation I want to have. Will, so before I come to you, Will, I'm going to go to the prettiest person on this panel. Aww. Angela, go ahead. So.
Okay, so as I'm sitting here listening to all of this, it's all coming to kind of into a head for me because when we all shared what our reaction to watching George Floyd die in front of our eyes, I didn't share my thought, but it all comes together with what everything's been said so far. So I want to bring it back to that. So, my first reaction was, this is racism aside, this is evil. This is awful. This is horrendous. And I hated that feeling. I think it was you, Lee, that said we watched life dissipate before our eyes. We don't see that every day. And that was just disgusting and awful. And so then I'm immediately not unaware of the fact that yes, race did play a big part of that. And then I think, and here's how I know that. Well, I know that because if I had and at the time I didn't realize it was a forged, a bad check, or now I know it was a $20 bill, a counterfeit $20 bill. When I heard that, I immediately thought to myself, if I had a $20 bill and I went to a local store here in our community, people would have felt bad for me that I had a $20 bill. Somebody gave me a $20 bill and I got jacked. And so, I wrote something on Facebook yesterday. I said, well, I wonder if George Floyd stuck around because he thought the police wanted to help him track down the bad guys that gave him the $20 bill. Now, obviously, I know that wasn't what he was thinking. I know that's not the case. But my point is, I wanted you to see my perspective. I wanted you to think, man, gosh, if I was going to talk to the police about that situation, that's what I would be thinking, that there are some bad people around making counterfeit $20 bills, and we need to get to the bottom of that, and we need to stop that. And so I thought, oh my goodness, what a different experience that is. And so then I say that, and it's all brief. I hope you guys are tracking me, because I know I'm getting emotional. But I think back to Sarah's question of how do we help the white people that don't understand? And I think it goes back to what Jesus did, which was to give parables, to tell stories. And I tell my own stories. I tell my own stories of my biases, and I tell my own, story. The one I hate the most is the one where I became aware that, Alex's extended family didn't like that he was marrying a white girl. And I was shocked by that, because I thought that they would think that was kind of like a step up or something, like how ignorant I was as a 20-year-old something, 20-something. But that was just my personal prejudice and my personal bias that I thought, my society taught me that white was better somehow. And so I loved Black people. I didn't have anything against them, but I just thought that white was better somehow. It's how I'd been conditioned. And so when we talk to other people and we tell them our stories, that helps reduce that level of threat, because you're not saying, you can't say that, you don't say color and then say, but I'm not going to go to that side of town, you can't say that to them, because they're just going to be offended by that. But you can say, you know what, this is what I realized when I said something like this one time, and you tell your story. And like hearing, Lee's stories just now, like stories connect with our hearts, and then that helps us put our heart and our mind together. And I think that's what's so different about George Floyd's situation, is because all of us can see that what happened was wrong. He should not have died in front of our eyes like that. It's so easy for us to think, those of us that have had good experiences with police officers, to think that obviously he had to have been doing something that caused that to happen. But, some of us know that that's not the case, that you don't always have to be resisting arrest, but just because somebody in power has this bias against people that look like you, they can force this issue. My heart broke, and I'm going to be done here in a second, but my heart broke last night watching the riots with my 19-year-old mixed son. And I was saying, they can't do this. They can't go and loot and burn the police station. This is, and he's like, Mom, and he was choking back tears. And he's like, Mom, what do you expect them to do? Like, this is the only way people are listening right now. This is, they just haven't been heard. They haven't been seen. And nobody would care if they were out there politely protesting. And he's like, Mom, they have to be heard. They have to be seen. And that was kind of eye-opening to me, because he's not an anti-police kind of kid, But he saw that, and it clicked with me that I needed to see things from yet another perspective that I didn't. I was only thinking, this is disorder. This is not okay. We got to shut this down. And he saw it from a different perspective, from his 19-year-old vantage point.
I think what has really frustrated my family, I'll speak for my family, is we witnessed an emergence of a civil rights movement that literally got destroyed through media, through political wranglings. The Black Lives Matter movement abused, mistreated, and lied about. Colin Kaepernick abused, mistreated, lied about. And so it's just been so tough as I've traveled to hear my different friends say, hey, all lives matter. And I go, that's when I take my deep breath and I remember that they're a first grader.
Right.
And I say, okay, listen, let's say you're married for 50 years and your wife is feeling a little insecure one day. And she says, baby, do you love me? And I go, my wife and I have been married a long time. This is a moment where I need to really tell her I care. And I say, baby, I love all the people in the world. How does that work? And it's so hard. For me, this has been my cross lately, is seeing all these movements rise up. I mean, I marched for Trayvon Martin. I've seen the pain. I've spoken to it. But to see it just get crushed over and over again, it's made me in this situation less willing to speak, because I'm just so tired of it being relegated to a sound bite or a sound clip, and I don't want to be a part of noise. But we just, like Alex said so well, we have to heal quickly, because if not, it's going to go back to what it was or what it will be, which could be much, much worse.
Yeah.
Well, what we're not really addressing is the root, because I believe there's a new root that's being developed. And I think from an African-American community, people are concerned about how do they protect themselves in a community or in a society that won't protect them. Do I need to start taking things in my own hands to protect myself? Because I understand that it may not be favorable for me in certain situations, in certain places. Because this hatred, Angela, as you were just speaking about, is growing. Let me just say this. A lot of times, the minority, you talk about the squeaky wheel, right, gets the oil.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a small group of people, but it feels like it's a lot of people. I want to believe that this hatred and that we're talking about and this type of vitriol is not really growing, is not really spreading. Majority of the people do not think like the gentleman thought. I mean, it's a wonderful world out there. But because of media and because of what's going on and what's being said, it feels like sometimes, like the Old Testament text, it'd be more of them than it'd be of us. And what do we do? And so now it feels like we have to take matters into our own hands. And that's the real issue that is brewing. It's brewing like we're moving towards a civil war. By the people and not by the state.
Oh, sorry. So on that, so let me just ask this, and I asked this to the panel. So racism growing? I saw a quote by Will Smith. I thought it was interesting. I think it's something like, hey, racism isn't growing or getting worse. It's just getting filmed. I mean, what do we think about that? I mean, you hear that quote. What do you guys think? Will, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, I wouldn't necessarily say it's growing. I would say it's changed faces.
Mm.
I think it's always been there. I think as new generations have arrived, it looks different. It's becoming more masked. It's become more systemic. It's not overt. It's more covert. It's happening in the police departments. It's happening in corporations. It's happening in the incarceration system. It's happening. But it's not like you can find a KKK cross filled with diesel fuel with a burlap scarf over it. Like you're not seeing that as often anymore, right? It kind of speaks to what Sarah was speaking of. And that is a deceitfulness, I would say, of the enemy.
Yeah.
Because it allows people to dismiss that they are a part of it.
That's true.
It allows them to say, oh, I'm not. And so I don't necessarily say it's growing. I think it's been the same, even though for the sake of lives like MLK and Rosa Parks have made a great progression toward where we are today from where we used to be. It's put on a different mask.
Good.
That's what I would say.
Anybody else?
Honestly, I think that it comes from a place of white privilege to say that racism has suddenly become a problem. Because again, I get to say, but it stopped in the 1960s. Wasn't that so great of us? And so I don't have to confront it, but that's for me to be able to have the luxury to say, because my lived experience wasn't experiencing racism every day for the last 60, 70 years since we've gone from the civil rights movement. So for me to say this feels new or like it's being stirred up feels very, very wrong.
Anybody else? I say this because I think that, and I want people to know, I don't represent all people, all Black people. And even though we have several of us on this panel, we don't represent everyone. I know I've talked to many of you already, and we talk to other people and they talk to people. And so we do our best as pastors, as leaders, to get a sense of the people. But what you bring up, Lee, is there's people on all ends of the perspective that feel, hey, it's getting worse. Some people know it's getting better. Well, we can't dishonor what the civil rights leaders in the past have done. So, so I don't know, but I said this before, I think, and I use a biblical term, it's already, but not yet. Man, we are seeing progress, but we have not yet arrived. And I love what you were saying, Will, because it's like, maybe these are the last, and I don't know, maybe I'm being optimistic on this, but are these the last tentacles that's trying to, that is digging in, like, that last little bit so we're not letting go, because I just believe, and I want someone to speak to this, I believe that our country, Black, white, brown, by and large, want justice for all. I believe that the majority of the people want to see racism, prejudice, inequality no longer. I mean, that's my perspective. Am I alone? And I take a lot of heat for that. I mean, what do you all think?
So I'm hesitant to even give an opinion on this, and I'll just tell you why. I think I've been blinded to a lot of things for so long in my life that I don't know that I can give an accurate assessment. Yeah. I'll tell you that I think I'm encouraged by some things and discouraged by some things. Encouraged that I have had more of these conversations with people over the last 5 years, with pastors who are leading churches like mine, trying to get their heart around the issue. So in my world, my small little tiny world, I see some signs of some progress. And then when I look at the political culture and how divided we are over everything, and how everything is so quickly turned into posturing to gain power, I feel more hopeless. And so, but I don't know that I'm the right person to give even an assessment of that. I'm just telling you what I see and feel, but I'm probably not the source of opinion, but just that's kind of where I'm at right now, I guess.
Thanks for your honesty.
Yeah.
Alan, you got anything on that?
I'm sorry, I was muted there, but I know the question, but could you ask me the question again? I want to make sure I answer
it. Yeah. So, racism, I just think by and large, the majority of the people in America, Black, white, brown, everyone, they want to see equality. They want to see justice. Yeah. I'm under the impression that things are getting better, if you will. Maybe I'm optimistic on that. And I think several people I talk to feel that way. But what do you think? I mean, what are you getting? What are you hearing from?
I think it's really hard. It's easy to love people with the love of the Lord. That's the love God gives. But I think it's impossible to truly love people without knowing them and desiring to know them. And for in my opinion, which I like to to qualify that every time I speak, in my opinion, I can't love you from a distance. I can't love you outside of my home.
That's good.
I can't love you away from my family.
That's good.
I have to engage you to love you. because love includes touch.
Yeah.
And so it's when we say it's getting better, I think we've gotten really good at being amicable and being legal
Politically correct about it. It's
versus
politically correct.
illegal or disruptive. But we have not gotten better at loving.
Right.
We've not got better at touching. We've not gotten better. That hasn't changed.
To know and to be known. That's the thing.
Yes.
That's what love is, to know somebody and to be known by them. And that's so it. I mean, we don't, there's a story in our book about how we were at a gas station one time late at night, and it had like 30, 40, 50 Black young adults there hanging out after we found out roller skating together nearby. And they all went over to the gas station. And I walked in there and I was so awkward, and I'm not awkward usually around a large group of Black people. I've been in that setting enough, that I'm not. But I remember thinking, okay, I'm not awkward, but they probably think I feel awkward. And so I wonder if I should say something like clever, like, oh, I'm married to a Black man, so I'm cool with being here. How stupid is that? But I just had all of that cognitive dissonance. Is that the right way to describe what I'm saying? And I remember leaving there thinking, it's so sad. It was a couple years ago. In 2018, I should know people better than to have all of that weird awkwardness going on in my head. Because if that was a group of 50 young adult white people, I would not have had any of those thoughts in my head. I would have just went in, got my drink from the fountain, and walked right back out, moseyed on, got my day.
Yeah.
I think that really speaks to our familiarity. I think the awkward is that how often do you go in a store that's have predominantly Black people in it? How often do I go in a store that has predominantly white people in outside of a work environment? I think what we have to really understand that we're fighting against is our sphere of influence or our sphere of networking. And most of our sphere look like us. I mean, that's really what happens. And so when we're dealing, like my church is predominantly Black church in the inner city of St. Louis. And I tell my church, we won't look like heaven until people that don't look like you come in here.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is that now you challenge people to witness to people that don't look like you. Well, how awkward is that? And how much do you have to get over these other issues, right, in order to share the love of God with them? And that's really for every believer. That's the challenge, because everyone is invited in to be a part of the kingdom. Mm-hmm. But yet and still, we feel more comfortable with sharing God with only people who looks like us. And that's the challenge. And once we can get past that and break past that, then we can actually penetrate our culture with these pockets even more. Mm-hmm. And Pastor Jeff, everybody has to walk with the spirit of forgiveness. See, in order for me to be able to minister to someone who don't look like me, the first thing I got to do before I approach them is forgive them. Because I've already, Sarah, as you said, we've already got these preconceived notions in our mind about what the other person is. And Alex, you said something that was uniquely clever, but everyone does not have the ability to get to understand racism from a sensibility perspective. And so we don't have that middle ground in our thinking, because we don't allow forgiveness to really penetrate our heart enough to get there. And so therefore, in our worlds, everything is hard, contrast. And, I eat chitlins, you don't eat chitlins, right? Exactly. My point of it is the hard contrast. Again, the hard contrast, right? The hard contrast is what really the point that I'm trying to make, is because we don't allow ourselves in America to fully cross over into other cultures and share our experiences because of the awkwardness or the unfamiliarity. But when you go overseas, when you go to Africa, when you go to Honduras, when you go to Brazil and do mission work over there, you have no problem.
That's true. That's a good
It's
point.
about expectations.
Yeah.
You know, we expect that we're going to have to understand a different culture when we do that, but yet we don't feel like we ought to understand the different cultures that are represented here in our country.
That's good.
I think from an evangelism perspective that Jesus knew exactly what our problem was going to be, which is why he didn't just commission them to just tell everybody, right? But he was very specific about start in Jerusalem to the people that you know. But he specifically sent them to Judea and to Samaria, to people that were not like them, did not think like them, were a different culture, and were an enemy race for them. He was very intentional in pointing that out. And I think that we have to take that on board today, that until we're willing to go and to bring the good news of Jesus to somebody who doesn't look like me, think like me, act like me, we're missing our opportunity for evangelism. And I think that we have to begin to see that, begin to act on it, and move on it if we're ever going to win our world.
That's so good.
It's interesting to note too that in Acts, in Acts 8 and beyond, it was persecution that pushed the church from Jerusalem to Judea to Samaria. They didn't like the Samaritans. There's no way they're going to reach them. And even then, it was a vision that caused Peter and Paul to step beyond the Jews into the Greeks. So, there's people that God has done that with. There's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., God gave him a vision. He gave him a dream.
Yeah.
And if we're not asking God for dreams and visions of how we can love people and how we can better touch lives, we're going to continue to forget that the greatest mission field is within a 5-mile radius of our house.
Good.
And we love everybody around us with the kindness and the compassion that is needed and demanded by God.
Hey, and I'll just add a little bit to that, man. Like, Alex, just going back to your question, I love the optimism, and I think we definitely have improved in our country. Just a couple of things that bounced off my mind from the comments that were made was, one, what we're dealing with here, it seems as though is the mindset of superiority in people. It started from Genesis 3. Even Adam, God, don't eat the apple, you're going to be like God. And so this temptation for us to think that we're somebody, when in reality, we're nobody. We came from the dirt we return. And so I often call myself a dirt bag. Because
I'll do that too.
I know, and so the reality of it is, if we take on Jesus's model from Philippians 2, that he humbled himself as a bondservant, lowering himself as to nothing, yet he was equal with God. After that comes superiority. After that, he was exalted. And so it's like we'll get exalted when we get to see Jesus. But here on earth, man, we're nothing. We are to be mere bondservants of Christ. And I think when we as the church begin to understand that we're competing against culture, and we know this in leadership, you guys that went to school and seminary, what's the old saying? Culture eats vision for lunch. Racism is a vision within culture. We have to change culture. How do we change culture? We change people. How do we change people? It's through the gospel. It's through having intentional conversations regarding this matter of issues in our hearts. When my last thought would say, we as the church, we are not called to isolate from culture. We're called to infiltrate it.
Yeah.
And so in order to infiltrate it, though, we have to know that we're mere bondservants. Like Paul said, I became some that I may win some. And so, man, if I got to go into projects and have a missionary mentality and step on roaches and help clean, folk that got roaches and eat Cheetos, or if I got to go to the project or, to the hut over here and they don't have a kitchen, like whatever I got to do to be a servant, You know, if I got to go to the suburbia home, you know, in C3 car garages and whatever I got to do to be a servant to reach people and infiltrate the culture, that's living incarnationally. And so I would say, man, we're competing up against culture.
That's good. That's good. Hey, listen, guys, this is good. That's really good. We're gonna wind this thing up, and so thank you for sharing. And I love where this is going. We're gonna share this on Facebook. I have a lot of friends and people that are Christians, and a lot of them that aren't. That are just like, hey, listen, you talking about this Christian stuff. All of us are pastors. You tune into this call, you're knowing it. You're going to get some of Jesus with you, some God. And so I appreciate you all sharing that. Here's what I want to do. I want to give you 30 seconds. I want you to give me a message. What's the message that we're leaving people with? And so I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that. But before I do that, there's some questions. I told people to send me questions. I'm giving you 15 seconds. I'm going to call on some of you to answer some of these questions. All right. So, Pastor Alan Griffin, what can white people do to stand for justice?
The main thing you can do is join somebody else's movement. Don't try to create your own. Find someone who's doing something that you find is effective and that you find your life mission aligns with, and get on board and serve them.
That's awesome. Okay, Pastor Jeff Leake, I want you to answer this one. This is a question I got. Why aren't more white pastors teaching on this? How do we take the conversation further from the pulpit?
Good question.
I apologize.
I'll tell you why I didn't. I tell you why I didn't for a long time. I didn't know how to talk about it because I felt awkward and I didn't want to say something stupid. And so I also felt like, who am I to bring this up? Because I'm white. So I started over the last 2 years having a conversation with some friends who could help me. So now we've done this twice. It has been really well received for the most part. And so I think you just got to do it. Like, it's better to try and fail than keep on doing nothing.
That's good. Okay, listen, one more question, then I'm gonna give you guys this chance to close this out. Bishop, I know you do the 4 or 5 hour services. I need 20 seconds. Okay, 20 seconds. Answer this question. What's some positive? And, you know, people are feeling pain, and people, you know, and we didn't go into a lot of this, but there's a lot of destruction and stuff. Speak to us. What are positive ways that people, and we see in Minneapolis, there's black and white. This isn't just a black thing, but what are positive ways people can express their pain, their anger?
I think you have to speak truth to power, and righteousness has to be the call of the day. So I think what you could do, I think Pastor Griffin said it, you know, stand with other people. And I think what is really key, stand with other people that don't look like you.
That's good. Yeah. That's really good.
And let's stand together for righteousness. And I know people want to say justice, but justice can be skewed. Again, as I see it from a color perspective, we understand that it can be skewed. So let's move past justice, and let's move towards righteousness.
Amen. That's good. I like that.
So, hey, to close this out, I'm going to give everybody a chance to go, and I'm going to start with you, Pastor Allen. Thanks for joining us. I know you have another call that you have to leave on, and sorry about the technical difficulties of going late, but go ahead and give us a 30-second. What's the message, you know, the words of healing, the words of hope that you want to leave us with?
I want to get close to the screen so you can see my face. I want everyone to know this, that everyone around you is mourning, and we're going to do it differently. If we don't talk to you right now, please don't get mad. Don't be privileged in our response to you. Let us grieve. We'll be back. And when we come back, we're going to fight this thing, and we're going to fight it together.
That's good.
Be ready to fight. This is a long-term fight. I told my friends on Facebook the other day, this is our version of abortion. You've been fighting it for 40 years. We're going to fight this for 4,000. Let's fight, and let's take our time and get focused on how we're going to do it. Wow. And let's do it together.
It's good words. Hey, thanks for joining us, Pastor Allen. I know you got to run off.
I love you.
Love you too, brother. Let's go with you, Pastor Jeff. What are words that you want to leave us with? Words of healing, words of hope?
I can't speak for everybody, but I can tell you this: I'm ready to follow. So lead the way, guys. I'm on board. I'm ready to, like Alan said, join someone else's movement. I'm joining yours, and I'm going to be on a mission to find others. I know that I've got to learn, first of all, just to listen. But after this whole thing with what happened in Minneapolis with Mr. Floyd, I feel like I need to act now. Like, I don't want to just empathize. I want to do something, but I don't want to act independently. So I'm ready to join. I'm ready to follow, and I'm ready to bring all of my influence to bear to be a part of this battle. So you have my heart. I'm ready to go.
Thank you. Thank you. Ange, what are some words?
Okay, well, to make this so simple, I feel like we already know what to do. Be like Jesus. That's the bottom line. Be like Jesus. He gave us the battle plan, and it's not lost on me that this is Pentecost Sunday coming up. This is where they all came together in one accord, and the power of the Holy Spirit descended upon them, and that message went out in everybody's own language, and it changed the world.
Amen. Amen. Let's go to you, Bishop. I said 30 seconds, but we know you're going to take 2 minutes. Do your thing, bro.
Thank you. I just think everyone needs to remember that this particular incident's come off the heels of us seeing a man shot to death in Georgia. And so that was one wound. And this just opens the wound even more. And so there's a lot of, for the people who are trying to do right and be right and have a great heart, this produces a great problem for us, because for the African American person, we got to remember that we can't treat everybody as if they did it. We're still commanded to love everybody.
That's hard.
And watch this, love them even when you know that they are not treating you right.
That's good.
So as an African American person, we got to remember that God has commissioned us to show a love that elevates, that shows a love that draws. Because with love and kindness have I drawn all men to our bosom. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that you don't speak out and say this hurts. It doesn't mean that you don't fight until there's equality in the middle class, until economics are the same, until our inner city schools have every resource that it needs to bring everyone up to a standard of equality in society, which will help erase or eradicate what we see as racism, because the dividing lines, the diversity then becomes, that gap becomes closer. So we still have work to do, even in our criminal jail system, which predominantly over 60 to 70% of them are African American or people of color in the jail system. We still see that there is disparity in our community, but we can work to change as long as we remember that the actions of one does not convict all.
That's good. That's good. Pastor Sarah, what words you want to leave us with of healing and hope?
Earlier, Alan said something to the effect of just, we're tired. And somehow then the picture, an Old Testament picture of Moses with his hands up, growing so weary just from the fight and just from the battle that was ongoing. And I just had that picture in my heart then of the white church being able to come and to begin to lift up the arms of our African American brothers and sisters. And we're not going to get it right. We might accidentally pinch you. We might drop your arm a little bit, but we're And if that can be our picture, that we're holding each other up and that we're together in the fight and in the battle to see this come to an end, and in the process that we can share Jesus and show Jesus, as she said, to a world that desperately needs to know what it is to have someone that's got your back, that's standing with you, to know what mercy and grace and love are all about, and we can show that through unity. So
That's
Amen.
wonderful. Thank you. Brother Will, what do you got?
Yeah, and I would say, just speaking to kind of both sides of the spectrum, I would say for the African American community, the Black community, some offer of healing and hope would be one, like Bishop Scott was saying, and let's not try to overgeneralize, meaning like let's not make one incident all. That's a common misnomer that we as people have a tendency to do, and so I think we just have to be cautious of that. The other thing that I would say to the African American community would be for us to begin to deal with our trauma, begin to take the necessary steps to deal with our trauma. A lot of the things that we have endured because of events and harmful situations like this, our trauma has been stored up within us. And that often leads us to anger and behavior that is ungodly, right? The Bible tells us we can be angry, but sin not. And so we just have to try to take the necessary steps, get the necessary resources to begin to deal with our trauma. And I was on the call the other day with a bunch of our African-American brothers and sisters. And one of the things that I heard from us was, that's not our job, which I would disagree with, because if we blame other people, then that means we put the power in their hands for us to change. We do have a role to handle our trauma. We do have a role. Obviously, the oppressor has done a great due diligence in oppressing the Black community. But then in the white circles, the white evangelical leaders, and even non-saved people, I would say that we have to begin to not wave the banner of indifference. Being indifferent means I agree with what's happening. And so we can no longer stand for indifference. We've got to speak. We've got to share that this is not right, that this is injustice. Begin to invite our friends in the white circles and communities to understand and get the perspective that we may have for seeing what is unjust. I would say that. And then lastly, as our white brothers and sisters, we got to take the initial step to ask the Holy Spirit what's in our heart. We've got to allow him to deal with our implicit biases, right? If you think about peanut butter, you automatically think about jelly. Well, in the Black community, it's like if Sarah's walking at night in North Tulsa and she sees 3 Black people, she might grab her purse. She might pull her kids close to her. Well, why is that? What is it that it's like the peanut butter and jelly, man? And so media, culture, propaganda has done that to culture, to portray an image of Blacks that has, unfortunately, whites looking at us like peanut butter and jelly. And so it's one of those things that I would say these are some practical steps that I think we need to take as Blacks and as whites to make sure that we continue to address this matter of racism.
Man, thanks, Will. That's so wise. That's so wise. I'm going to wrap it up, and I'll just say this. When Angie and I started on this journey, we were drawn into this by the Holy Spirit. God knew all along, but he led us into this space of racial reconciliation. It was when we were in St. Louis and after the Ferguson incident, and God gave us a message then, and we've continued to formulate it, but here it is. It's 1 John 1, 5-7. In him we know that God is light. In him there's no darkness at all. And if we who claim to be in the light don't live that way, we're lying. And it says it's Christ's blood that purifies us from all sin. And so we need to live in unity. And who's that message to? It's to Christians. Our message is to the church. It's to Christians. We believe that we have to be the ones leading the conversations, the dialogue, and the discussion in racial reconciliation, because we know where it should lead to, and that's to ultimately reconciliation unto Christ. And so, man, we're about reconciling people unto each other, but it's ultimately so we can reconcile people unto Christ. God's intended mission for all people from the beginning of time was to reconcile all men and women unto him, black, white, brown, yellow, red. That's called Missio Dei. And we are supposed to be used to help in that. So that's why I want to always say, Christians, please, brothers and sisters, help us, join with us in the mission of reconciliation. So, hey, that's all we have for you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thanks for all your time. You guys have been wonderful. I love these things. Comment, leave us a message. If you want to get in touch with one of these pastors, leave a message on our Facebook. We'll pass along information and messages that you have. God bless you. Until we see you again, love, peace, and hair grease. All right.
God bless you.
Bye.
All right.